Most of us are very excited when we find out that there's a DXpedition for a couple of reasons. One is we appreciate how difficult it is for them to get there. These trips take years in the making. And when they're there, they're typically in very harsh, difficult circumstances, and they're not there for long. And if you want to get a sweep of all the possible places on the Earth, you need to contact these guys. So it's very exciting. But these things don't happen overnight. They don't happen by magic. They take a ton of hard work. So tonight we are thrilled to have Dan Sullivan, K4DKS, who is a part of a DXpedition to Sable Islands, which is up very far north. So I'm just going to give you 3 numbers. Here they are. The first number is 7. 7 years of planning. Second number, 85,000. That's how many contacts they made. And the third number is the number 49. It is the 49th sought-after DX country. With that, Dan, the floor is yours. Thank you so very, very much.
So first of all, thank you for having me. Thanks to Ron for inviting me, and it's great to be here. I live in the area, so it's fun to pop into these local clubs and see a lot of old friends in some cases. So tonight, Charlie Yankee Zero Sugar. It's IOTA North America 63 for anybody that knows what IOTA is. This is what Sable Island is famous for. These ponies. Many of you have probably been to Assateague and you've seen the wild horses. Sable Island has 500, almost 600 of these ponies running around. They've been there for 100 years. There's a lady that lives there that's lived there for 40 years, and she does nothing but study the horses and the birds. I'll go through some of these quickly because they're not terribly interesting, but they were to us. So Sable is very rare. It's difficult to get to. You can't just take a plane, a scheduled flight. It's a charter flight. So there have been a number of operations, but they've been pretty low scale. And it became a DXCC country way back in 1976, I think. That was the first time it became affiliated by the DXCC as a country. There were a number of operations over the years, mostly by Canadians, and again, they weren't very large operations. You start to see some frequent operations starting back in 2011. Again, these were not terribly large scale. They made a couple of thousand contacts. So it became more and more rare as time went on. And as Don said, in 2016, Murray, WA4DAN, he was kind of the push behind all this. He's been up there a number of times. He wanted to try and put Sable on one more time. Well, unfortunately, it changed status from it became a national park in 2016, and that gummed up the works. So it became you could kind of, before that you could generally go up there and hang around a little bit, and if you could catch a flight out, you could hitch a ride. Once the parks took over, it became much more cumbersome to get permission. But starting in 2016, Murray was steadfastly tried to do it and worked behind the scenes. We, as a group, the initial group, imagine this took 7 years to do. The group changed over those 7 years. We had deaths. We had severe illnesses, so we had multiple turnovers in the actual makeup of the group. By the time we got there in March of this year, we figured that 10 and 12 meters were going to be good, and there had been very little activity on 10 and 12. It's from Sable before, very little on 30, 160, a little bit on 17. There had been some RTTY activity back in 2000. And there had never been any activity on FT8, FT4, or 2-meter EME. So those were going to be a couple of new modes for people. This is the club log list, and this is what we used to kind of figure out how rare this place was going to be. Overall, as Don said, it was number 49 in the world, 26th on CW, and 17 on data. It's particularly rare in Asia. It's ranked in number 3 and number 10 in their most wanted list. Europe, it's up there, mostly data because there had been no FT8 operations until we got there. And Oceania, CW was pretty high up there as well. Our focus was really going to be on Far East Asia if we could. We were hoping for a lot of great openings to JA. They didn't really materialize, but we still managed to work quite a few, as you'll see. So again, 2016, we got pushed back. We originally were going to go in 2020. Of course, COVID hit, and that stopped everything dead. After 6 years of negotiating, Murray finally secured permission. Problem was that they weren't allowing overnight stays at all. So the only tourists that were allowed to go out there, now that it was a national park, were during the summer mostly, and they were day trippers. So they had to charter a seat on this flight. You'll see this plane in a few minutes. So they had to pay upwards of $1,000 for a one-day trip to fly out there and back. And these were mostly birders and other people that are interested in seeing the horses. But they'd fly out in the morning first thing, fly back as late as they could that night. They could not stay overnight. However, they did allow for researchers to spend the night. And so we suddenly became radio propagation researchers. And by being categorized as such, we were permitted to stay, to gain permission to stay for what turned out to be 11 days. So in 22, the permit was issued. It kicked into high gear. We thought we were going in October, which is a really good propagation time. Some big contests during that period. But a hurricane went through, as I recall. I think a hurricane went through in September, October, and did pretty severe damage to some of the buildings. So the parks folks had to send crews out to repair the damage, and they took up all the housing, so we couldn't go out. So they pushed us back to March 2023 this year, and that was all approved. So we were very excited to go. This is the team that actually went. Again, it's very different than the team that was originally scheduled. These are some Hall of Fame contesters and DXers, and CW was our prime mode. We hoped to make mostly CW contacts. We couldn't outdo FT8, but we put a dent in the CW. Some of these names may or may not be familiar. These are all widely known operators in the DX world. Some of them have been some of the 40 DXCC operations. Dr. Glenn on the right, far right, W0GJ, DX Hall of Famer. He almost pulled out at the last minute. He suffered a pretty severe shoulder injury, but and interestingly enough, he's an orthopedic surgeon. He hurt himself doing something on his tractor in Iowa, but he had the surgery and was able to go. His arm was in a sling, as you'll see in a moment. But so we kept him on light duty, but he soldiered on and went with us. This was the team. Some of these folks were supposed to go on the first operation, the first team, and for some reason didn't make it. Bob had an illness. Bill decided to stay behind and handle the OQRS operation, which is the QSLing. Dr. Sand, K5YY, had lost his home to a tornado about 6 months prior to the trip, so he pulled out, obviously. Pat into IEN. Pulled out for business. Randy, some other problems, and we were just getting old. So some of us just didn't feel like going anymore. We were pretty old. We also had a couple of sad issues. Wayne was supposed to go on the trip, and he became a silent key during that 6-year period. He passed away from cancer. And Will, AA4NC, actually died in a private plane crash. He was piloting his Mooney, and was killed about 18 months prior to the trip. Great guy. He was on St. Paul with us. Fundraising was always a big deal. This was an expensive trip. Nothing like Bouvet or one of the other big ones, but it was still expensive. The transportation was very limited. We had a lot of corporate sponsors who, back as far as 2018-19, when we first firmed up the trip, they started contributing, and with all the delays, kept pushing back, and we always offered to return the money because we weren't sure we were going to go. They all said keep it, and if it becomes a definite no, obviously we return the money. But they hung with us. We had a couple of late joiners, W2GD and K9CT, replaced some of the folks that either had health problems or business issues. Murray nailed down the transportation. We were going to use a combination of a fixed-wing aircraft and a helicopter. I should mention now that the helicopter was really expensive. It was actually paid for by a private donor. Otherwise, we'd been significantly out of pocket as operator, but that was okay too. Parks Canada approved us to stay for 10 days and use the visitor quarters, which we'll see in a minute. We secured the CY0S license, which was interesting because I had to actually sit for the Canadian exam. If you operate from Canada and you don't have a Canadian license, you have to use your stateside calls / wherever you're operating from. So to secure the special CY0S call sign, I had to sit for the Canadian exam and pass that, and then I could actually apply for that. It's not really a license; it's more of a permit. It actually died at the end of the operation, so it's still, if you look it up in QRZ, it's still there. And if somebody wants to pay me for it, they can have it later. Here it is. We took various routes to get there. Like I said, there were 8 of us. WWD's folks flew by air. They flew from New York to Halifax. Dr. Glenn and K4ZLE drove from the Midwest, and WA4DA and myself, we made the long drive from here. Actually, Murray came up from North Carolina and picked me up. It's about a 18-hour drive. In March, it was a little bit iffy. We actually had pretty good snow in Maine on our way up to the border, but thankfully it didn't stop us. This is what it looks like on approach when you're landing on Sable. It's nothing but a big sandbar. It's pretty wide. It's about a mile or about a kilometer at the widest point. The operating location is around here, and it's probably a half a kilometer wide there. You'll see in a moment. This is our welcoming committee, one of the Ponies. Here's how we got there. So this is an old workhorse twin-engine prop that was made to carry cargo, and it's 4-passenger. If a lot of you here remember the old VW Bug, if you ever sat 4 people in a VW Bug, that's kind of how you felt when you're sitting in this plane. It was really, really tight. We had weight limitations. We were each allotted 240 pounds of both personal weight and carrying weight. So we had to really make sure that whatever food we took was going to fit in our carry-on or our cargo. Some of us had to lose weight, but we did, and we hit it right on the button. Each aircraft could take 1,500 pounds of cargo, and that included us. So pretty tight. And the cargo, you'll see, went back here. You'll see more in a minute. And the helicopter was the same way. A couple of folks physically couldn't fit in this aircraft, so the 3 of the skinniest guys went with the pilot in the big swing aircraft. They weighed everything, and they were meticulous. We were holding our breath because we couldn't have weighed everything quite specifically enough to say whether or not we had to push things back or not, but we needed everything. And so they had a scale, and they weighed every single thing and tagged it and pushed it off the side. And we took off. We had 980 pounds of equipment, and then us. So we just did make it. We had ski bags with the Yagis and the poles, the spider beam poles, and everything fit. So we had 40 pounds approximately, although some of us, a couple of guys were down to 170, 75 pounds, and we could carry a little bit extra because of that. This is the pilot. This is Debbie. She's made 800 flights to and from Sable during her time. She bought that aircraft for $5,000. It's a 1960s version aircraft, but it's been obviously upgraded. Although the avionics have not been upgraded, she's using pretty much the original stuff. All the equipment, it's packed thoroughly, and we didn't have to worry too much about being too careful with it as far as packing it, because it was just going to go right on and come right off. It wasn't going to be transferred anywhere, so we didn't have to worry about fragility very much. This is the chopper. It was a different hangar, again, limited weight. We had five of the guys went on the chopper. To go on the chopper, they had to fit into these immersion suits by law. For some reason, if you're on a chopper, you have to go in an immersion suit. If you're on a plane, I guess you just go down. I don't know what the difference is, but They had to rent those and fly in those. The chopper flight the flights over were about an hour flight to Sable and about an hour and 45 or 2 hours coming back because of the wind. So fuel became an issue as well. This was the fixed wing aircraft landing at Sable. So if you think back to that other slide, as we were coming in, Debbie did a long circular route. Now the parks personnel that live there, there's 3 that live there, actually 2 parks personnel that live there, that rotate. Before Debbie takes off from Halifax, they have radio communication, and they have to run out to this beach, or to a beach, it may be a different beach, and check it for firmness. If it's too soft, we can't land. If it's too hard, you can't land. So like the pour, it just got to be just right. They throw some cones out, and they park their gators so that Debbie can see the landing spot appropriately. We landed in 40 knot winds, headwind. So by the time we landed, we were almost coasting, almost dropped in. It's a weird feeling. I can't play the video, right, Josic? No, okay. It's too bad. This is not the PowerPoint slide, but I took a video of Debbie bringing us into that landing strip, and it gives it some idea of how it feels to come in like that. Once we landed, the gators were waiting for us. The crew there, the parks people, unloaded for us and put all the equipment on the gator, and we walked back. We walked to the quarters. Again, in about 40 knot winds, and it was with the winds, it was probably about 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It was really, and it was a sand blast. You were being blasted by the sand. Never felt that before. These are the visitor quarters. It's like an old dormitory. 8 bedrooms, a couple of bathrooms, a pretty decent kitchen, and we used the conference room as the operating location. Putting up antennas in that kind of wind was challenging, as you might think. Putting antennas together was a challenge, but thankfully Murray he was the keeper of the Yaggies, and he meticulously went down in North Carolina. He was at his home, and he put together every Yaggy, marked every Yaggy, took it apart, put it together so that we could put it together quickly, and those things went up in a hurry, and they needed to because it was really cold and windy. Just another view. This, I think, was so we had an A3WS, which was the work band antenna. This was the Cushcraft work band antenna. Worked very well on 17 and 12. These were some of the 20 and 15 meter Yaggies. They were only about 12 feet high, but they didn't need to be high. They worked like gangbusters. The water level, the effective height above ground was much higher than 12 feet because of the makeup of the island. Worked great. We used we had rope on the antenna, and when it came time to look for JA, we'd run out in the cold and swing the antenna around and hammer it into the ground and hope it stayed. We never lost an antenna in the whole time, and we had some really big whips you'll see in a moment. Sample room. We all brought sleeping bags. We didn't bother with linens and stuff. We just used sleeping bags. We operated split, obviously. The pileups were just massive. I've been on a couple of trips, and this was just massive. Conditions were excellent except for one day. A couple of guys on the team were expert contesters, and they liked the WPX contest happened to fall during that one of the weekends. And so they operated, the two of them made 6,000 contacts on phone over that weekend. We gave priority to Japan and Oceania and Africa, basically anywhere outside North America and Europe. We gave priority. If we heard that call, we told everybody to stand by and tried to work them. We used Foxhound exclusively on FT8. And Lee, WW2DX, did EME and satellite. I've got some more photos of that. This is our operating schedule. We had 8 people. We split up into 2 or 3 man groups and worked 3 to 4 hour shifts each time. So the evening shifts, the 2 in the morning to 5 in the morning could be very, very slow. But we stuck in there and tried to make, in some cases, those were openings that you wouldn't have during the day. So we worked hard to work everybody, the VKs and the ZLs, the Oceana. We heard during those time frames. But if you worked a shift and you went up and got some sleep and you wandered back down, there might be somebody operating that wanted a break, and you could sit in your seat and just work away until they came and tapped you on the shoulder and took their position back. It was very easygoing. Great team. No friction at all. Did have some software issues. That caused some friction. The usual bands, all the modes we did. We concentrated. We really wanted to do a lot of CW, and we wanted to do RIDI, and we did, and we had great times doing that. These are the antennas. We had monobanders, again very low. Verticals, I'll show you in a minute. We did put up a 60-meter dipole and had a lot of fun on 60. Lee put up an EME array and a 3-element Yagi and satellite array. We used N1MM for logging and for keyboarding, and we had 4 laptops, 1 per station. One served as the master, and the other 3 laptops synced with it. And we'd hoped to do the real-time logging. Any of you are familiar with that? You can see almost within a minute or two that you're in the log, that you worked. We didn't have the bandwidth from the island to do that, so we ended up just kind of the traditional way. Every so often, probably every 4 or 5 hours, our IT guy would come around with a thumb drive and dump the logs, and then he would upload those via the internet to Club Log. Really helps eliminate dupes. So here's the operating station. Again, it was just a conference room. That's the slow guy at the end. This W2GD and Murray, and this K4ZLE. We had 4 K3 transceivers, really good transceivers. We had 3 amps, the 500 watt amps, 4 laptops I already mentioned. And we did have bandpass filters, which we had to use. We had a low power bandpass filter between each of the rigs and the amplifier. And we also had a couple of large bandpass filters on the ends of the amplifiers. We used a diplexer on the 1712 Yagi, and I'd never used one of those before. It worked well. We could actually have 2 rigs on the same antenna at the same time. Worked great. No power problems. We had 2 1 megawatt generators that the Park Service maintains and lights up the whole island. Well, there's only 3 people there, but kind of overkill, but yeah. That's left over from the old days when they had 120 people there, but it's dwindled obviously since then. Once it became a park, it became a very different situation. So DX Engineering donated spider poles. We had a 60-footer which we used to support an 80 and 160 vertical. We guided at 4 levels and no issues. I mean, it looked like it was going to break, but it never did. We had 40-foot spider poles for the 40 and 30-meter verticals. K4UEE and N4GG down in Georgia. These guys are premier experts on low-band antennas in particular. They actually built the antennas and mailed them to us, shipped them to us, and we put them up, and they work great. The spider poles going up were actually easier than bringing them down. What happened was, and we didn't realize what was happening, was because the constant wind and the rain and the cold, they were getting coated with ice and sand. And so when we dropped them the last morning, we couldn't get them to telescope because they were all iced up. So we figured a way around. We finally got them to fit, but it was very last minute. We were almost on the verge of leaving a few of them. Simply couldn't break them down. More antennas shots. Had to get Canadian flag in there for you. Hey. This is Murray putting together the 20-meter 203BA. This is a big antenna, but when you're doing this, you want to have the best signal you can. You don't want the deliberate QRM. Some of you have probably dealt with that over time. You want to be able to bust through that deliberate QRM. And again, he had all these things taped and measured, and he could have that three element Yagi together in probably half an hour. then it took about 3 of us. We'd help him stand it up and guy it down. This was the EME antenna for satellite. He worked quite a few stations. I was surprised. I don't do satellites, so I don't know what a good number is, but he was pretty successful. A lot of Europeans. That's Marie on the right, Lou on the left. The equipment worked fine, great, just great. That's Lee, WW2DX. He was in a separate, we put him in a separate room just because he was separate mode and frequencies, and it was convenient for him, and he had his antennas on the other side of the quarters. K9CT, K4ZLE, operating CW. This is this is the doctor, Dr. Glenn. So really good CW operator inside band, but we relegated him to working 2 FTH stations at the same time because of his shoulder. He literally had his shoulder in a sling, but he could run 2 FTH stations at the same time. I'll show you FT8 in a minute. Everybody here? Anybody here? Everybody here on FT8? Pretty much. You know what? Okay. Here it is. Okay. So this is Fox Hound. So this is we're the hound. I'm sorry, we're the fox, you're the hounds. You're chasing us. So this is different than what you see on your home screen. So this is our decoding screen here. I don't know if you can read those or not, but anyway, so the call signs pop in here and decode. The operator takes your mouse and you click on whatever calls you want, and they get moved down into the queue. And depending on how many streams you have going, we had 4 or 5 streams, it would pull off 4 or 5 stations at a time, put them over in the in progress, and this is how they're being worked. So when we saw these pop up, if we saw a JA or a South American or something unusual, a difficult path station, we could click on them first, and the stateside guys or Europeans would stay down in the queue. We wouldn't move those to the queue. So but by doing that, we could control the pileup as far as who we were working on FT8. Very effective. This is Debbie, the pilot. So I think we'd been there most of a week, and Debbie only makes during the winter, she only runs out there about once every 2 weeks. But she had to make a special delivery of something for the parks folks, and God bless her, she brought us steaks. Because up to that point, we were eating freeze-dried food, the stuff you take when you go camping, which is actually pretty good, surprisingly good. But these sure were a tasty change from that stuff. And we put Dr. Glenn, with his surgery skills, to use. So you see this thing in the back. It's hard to tell how big it is. It's probably the size of a small car. That's the tsunami escape pod. If the island's very low, and if there was ever a tsunami or a high wave, you could fit 7 people in that thing and batten it down. It's got water and food, and I don't know about the toilet, but it's got a radio beacon, so the plan would be to just float around until somebody picked you up. There's another one near the other living quarters. I would hate to be the first one to ever use that. So we had a super expedition. We made a lot of contacts, about 8,000 a day. This is how it fell out. We had planned for a 30 March departure, but we had a weather problem at Halifax, not at the island. I mean, the island always had weather problems, but Halifax had low ceiling, I think it was, and even the helicopter couldn't fly. So they just said, sit tight. The park service was charging us $300 a person per night for the room in that quarters. They said, we won't charge you for the extra night. Thank you. But they were great. I mean, that's what they had to do. The team was Sarah and Ken. Sarah was kind of their team leader. Ken was the maintenance guy. He watched over the generators and any other thing else maintenance-wise that needed to be done. Our last QSO was on the morning of March 31st. The helicopter arrived first at 0900, and they took off pretty quickly. And that was the good news. The bad news was that left Murray and me and Dr. Glenn behind to take down most of the antennas and do all the packing. Because Debbie, the fixed-wing aircraft wasn't coming till about 1 o'clock. And it was brutally cold. That was probably the coldest day, of course, when you're outside doing antenna work. This is the entire team. This is Sarah. She was the parks chief. You could tell they were pretty lonely out there because she was over there a lot watching us. We actually let her make a few FTA contacts. This is a typical view. It didn't snow a lot, but it snowed sideways. And this is one of the days where it happened to stick on the ground. Beautiful, just beautiful. The chopper getting ready to take off and head back to Halifax. And we finally get to the beach with all the other stuff. Again, the wind is just howling. You can't see it there, but it is. Debbie would have to, if she typically was on the ground, we were there for probably 25, 30 minutes while she loaded, and she loaded everything by herself. We take it over to her, and she fit everything in. But even in that 30-minute period, the wind was blowing so hard, we'd have to dig the plane out. The plane could not take out. We'd dig the tires out. The sand had piled up that quickly. Number of QSOs, again, we tried to do our best on CW. I think we did. 27,000. Phone, 6,000 of those were during the contest. Had fun on RIDI. FT4 was the new one. FT8, you can see, that's the king. I don't care where you go now. FT8's going to be the king as far as the QSOs. And the JT8 on the JT65 on the end is the satellite stuff. But we worked a lot of people on FT8 that wouldn't have worked us otherwise. So it is what it is. Right, Ron? This is the interesting one, I think, is that Europe just outkicked everybody. Again, we tried to work as many JAs as we could, and we just stopped everybody else from calling. If we heard JAs, if we were on, I remember being on 17-meter sideband, and European was just booming, and I'm talking 20, 30 over 9, just a solid 20 kilohertz pileup. And suddenly you hear a weak JA in there, and you say, okay, Europe, stand by. Good luck with that. So, but you repeat it enough, and they finally stop, and you work a JA, and then you work more JAs, and then you finally work, and it might run for 10 or 15 minutes, then they're all gone, and now you work back to Europe. So Europe, it was okay as far as their standing by for us when we asked them to. North America was fine, of course, and there just aren't many stations out there in South America and Oceania to work us. Truly a special place. It's called the Graveyard of the Atlantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks, up to the, I think the last one that was recorded was in the 1950s. Of course, since GPS came about and all that, that's really just shut down. There were lots of rumors about how did the horses get there in the first place. And the rumor was they were on the shipwrecks and they landed on well, that wasn't true. They were actually brought over from Halifax. The weather was brutal, as I said. We did get to walk. We not only got to walk the beach, but the parks people actually took us on a tour, and they weren't supposed to. But it was a working trip. I mean, they actually took us all the way from where we were all the way to the northern tip in 2 Jeeps, and you'll see some seals here in a minute. Again, I talked about the deliberate QRM. We were told there was some deliberate QRM, but our signal was good enough that we overrode most of that. And that was because of the antennas and the amps. The RIDI ops, the best ones were the Italians, believe it or not. You know, they get a bad rep on sideband, but on RIDI they're really skilled. They could zero beat the last guy you worked, and they were there. And I was shocked how many people had their macros set wrong. They'd call, you'd respond to them, and you get some weird contest report or something that clearly they hit the wrong button. But the Italians were crisp. And FT4 had never been used there along with FT8. We probably should have planned that better because there was a massive amount of people calling us on that. I think you worked this, right? Yeah. We hoped for better paths on JA in Asia, but they weren't really there. But we did work a lot, regardless. Again, kudos to the parks team and Murray for doing a great job of all that. Just the patience that Murray exhibited during those 7 years. Debbie on Sable Island and the Visionaire folks. The weather there was changing every minute, it seemed like. We were really afraid that when we got up there and drove up there, they were going to get weathered out. And we could have sat there for 5 days, because if that beach is not landable, you sit at the hotel. At some point, you got to call it. So thankfully, we had a very narrow window where they said, okay, it's good to go. You got 2 hours. Get out there and get back. So we did. Famous ponies. I think there were 590. We understand that a foal was born just after we left. Sadly, though, on our trip around the island, we saw lots of dead seals, and we came across a dead pony on the beach itself, and they do nothing. The parks people are not allowed to do anything as far as any kind of help to distressed animals. So the horses just die. They suffer through the winter, but they eat enough grass and such during the summer. They beef up, and some don't make it through the winter. They do have freshwater ponds from the rain, and the horses frequently go down there and drink. It's not potable water for us, but it is for them, because they do their business there too, I guess. Seals everywhere. There's 50,000 fur seals there. They are nasty. As I said, we took the Jeep ride around the island, and they were everywhere. And the parks people just drive right through them, basically, because they know they're going to get out of the way. They're like a squirrel. They look at you and they don't know which way to go, but they finally flap around and go and leave you alone. But if you come upon them, sometimes you'll stumble on one. If you're taking a walk on the beach, you'll stumble on one by himself or herself, and they're pretty nasty when they're one-on-one. So you give them a wide berth. We're not allowed to interact with them anyway, so you walk around, but they're not the friendly little fur seals you see on the National Geographic. I think they said the color of the seal has something to do with the sex, the gender, so I think that might be a female sporting a fur coat. Lots and lots of dead seals. I don't know why. The parks people... They travel the island enough that they know when there's a new dead seal or a new group of dead seals, or and if they suspect something odd, they'll actually take a sample and take it back and have it sent into Halifax for investigation to see if it's something weird going on with the population. This was I think a right whale that died just before we got there. Again, nobody does anything. The gulls have a great time with it, and I think by the time we were gone, 10 days later, it was gone. I think the skeleton was there, and that was it. So I mentioned sponsors, and I'll go through this quickly. So the big ones were DX Engineering, which many of you have probably bought stuff from them before. They were very, very helpful to us. A lot of those DX groups are European and Asian. They all chipped in with nice donations, and as well as North America clubs and the National NCDXA, NCDXF, and California California DX Foundation gave us a very large donation. It was very expensive. The good news was we recouped, in addition to a very generous donor for the helicopter. We recouped a lot of funds from the QSLing process, the OQRS process. So, well worth it. This was a really cold day too. We were freezing out there holding these flags up. And we wrote it in the sand. I'm sure it's gone by now.
Dan Sullivan, thank you. This is wonderful. You've put on an event that a lot of us got excited about and we were able to participate. So thank you for putting in the hard work, for making it happen. It looks like it came off like gangbusters. What's next for you?
We're going back to St. Paul. The plan is to go back to St. Paul probably next August. So it's a tent operation. So this old guy, I'm on the fence right now about going back, and landing on St. Paul is precarious. It's not a beach. It's the black basalt type rocks and stuff. And I've got better things to do than be in a hospital in a cast. So